The other big story that we are tracking, of course, and that is the G7 summit, which is being held in Italy. And as we know that Prime Minister Modi is expected to attend a number of bilateral meetings today, a few meetings which are already on the agenda. But remember, largely, the summit is likely to be dominated by Ukraine and Gaza ceasefire talks. For more on this, I'm joined by my colleague Vishnu Shom from Italy. Vishnu, if you could take us through the agenda or the itinerary of meetings that the Prime Minister has lined up for today.
Well, Tanima, today is a very important day. This is, in fact, it's just a 24-hour visit. His first visit since he became Prime Minister, sworn in for the third time. He's going to be meeting the French President, Mr. Macron, a little while from now. He'll be meeting the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. He'll be meeting the Japanese Prime Minister, Mr. Kishida, as well. The British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. Later in the evening, there will be a bilateral with the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. And there will be, towards the end of the day, an informal dinner which the Italian Prime Minister will be hosting for him.
Right, Vishnu, among the number of names that you took, two key names that there's a lot of curiosity about. Is there any clarity on the meetings, whether Prime Minister Modi will be meeting US President Joe Biden and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Well, absolutely. And we don't know about Trudeau at this stage. If there is to be a pull aside, because I don't think there's a bilateral which is really scheduled so far, we'll know if there is. But if there is a meeting between the two leaders, it would come at a time when relations between New Delhi and Ottawa have plummeted to a real low. And therefore, if there is an effort at bringing that relationship up on an even keel, the differences between the sides are fairly stark. India, of course, is concerned about the threat of Khalistani separatism emanating from Canadian soil. Canada has a different perspective on a lot of things, but India is very clear on where we stand as far as this issue is concerned. So the relationship has been impacted. Can anything be done to sort that out? Number one. And number two, I do expect there to be a meeting with the US President Joe Biden. It's not been announced or shared with us in terms of a time and a detail. I would suggest that given the very strong relationship between America and India, that some sort of a meeting would likely take place.
And lastly, Vishnu, before we let you go, going back to the bilaterals which are actually scheduled today, what about the engagement with the Italian Prime Minister? What will be the focus of that meeting?
So that I would suggest is actually the most important meeting among the bilaterals over here. Italy is a very strong partner nation. The trade between India and Italy has really gone up. Remember, there are 2 lakh people of Indian origin who reside in Italy. The second largest number of people of Indian origin outside the Netherlands. Indian industry has contributed more than $400 million into Italy across sectors, whether it's IT, pharma, engineering, other areas as well. There's an incredible historic connect, which I've been speaking about as well. Remember, Indian soldiers fought for the liberation of Italy in the Second World War. 50,000 of them were involved in some of the biggest battles of the Second World War, including the Battle of Monte Cassino. That's something that's not been forgotten here in Italy. It's been forgotten perhaps in India to a large extent. But Indian soldiers and their contribution for the liberation of Italy, even though that happened decades and decades back, liberation from fascism is something that is revered over here in India. Indians are really looked upon as Italian saviors in a certain sense, way back in the day. Secondly, Indians have had a huge stake and contribution to the world-renowned Italian dairy sector, the ham and cheese industry, for example. In Parma, we all love our Italian cheeses, Tanima, don't we? Did you know that Sikhs from Punjab have had a huge role over generations in being part of that Italian tradition, in growing and developing the finest cheese products in Italy, a lot of which is exported. They're very much part of that tradition. So that's a couple of areas where India and Italy have a very close relationship, and indeed the defense relationship, whether it's high-tech transfers or increasingly military-to-military engagements.